I'm live.
He's live.
All right. We spent a little bit of time on you now and invited some people over here. We'll see if anything happens. And we're going to be doing our broadcast here. Ah, there we go. Joshua Collins, new member. Hello. How are you? Pleased to have you. Now, by the way, if you go into the general conversation and you have a microphone, you'll be able to actually talk to us instead of having to type if you want to do that.
It's true.
So that's one of the advantages of this broadcast this way. You don't have to type everything unless you're mic shy. I knew Mike Shy. Nice kid.
No, you didn't.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, his mother's name was Shine on Harvest Moon.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
These jokes just get worse by the day.
Yeah, we were on You Now earlier tonight for about 40 minutes. We'll be on tomorrow night on You Now.
Let's cover some of the bulletins for the people.
Oh,
I could do that.
Yes, do that so I can relax after talking for so long.
Our 22nd and 24th president was born on this day in 1837. It's pretty old.
Now, he was the only president, by the way, that did a double split. In other words, he was our 24th president and our 22nd president. He lost in the re-election, but I
don't think he ran. Did he?
No, you're right. He didn't.
Yeah, he came back. He cycled back in.
Yes.
Wasn't that before term limits, though?
Well, actually there was, but nobody ever tested term limits until Roosevelt. Roosevelt was the only one that actually decided to run a third term, and nobody objected, so they did it. Okay. OTC, how are you again? Pops up.
Now, do you think if he stayed healthy throughout his third term, if he would have run for a fourth term?
Who?
Roosevelt.
Didn't he run for a fourth term? I thought it was in his fourth term he died.
Was it?
Yes.
Okay, you're right, I think.
Shortly after his fourth term.
You know what? I think you're right.
Oh, can someone post the Discord link in there? That's what Joshua wants. Also, you might want to give him some instructions as to how to get
yeah, you could go right there and it'll have like the information. Hold on, I'll send that 1 second. Yes, you are correct. He served 4 terms, but technically no. Yeah.
Well, he died shortly after his second.
Yeah. Yes, and that. There's the Discord link. Anyway, to other news, Beto O'Rourke raised $6.1 million online in the first 24 hours of announcing his campaign for president. That just beats Bernie Sanders' $5.9 million. That's a lot of money. No Democrat comes anywhere near that. A couple people announced like $1 million. But that you're talking about a serious amount of money. But it's fair to take into consideration that money isn't everything. Jeb Bush, for example, started the race back in 2015 with a significant amount of money, and he went nowhere. So it's not the only factor, but it is important early on. Let's see what else we got. Ted Cruz fined $35,000 for not properly disclosing campaign loans from Goldman Sachs and Citibank. Doesn't come to a shock to us. California becomes 20th state to introduce right to repair this year. Essentially, right to repair is allowing the consumer who buys the product the ability to open that product, to repair, to diagnose issues, to fix it, anything they essentially have to do legally, and it doesn't void out the warranty.
Well, then how do you know if the person didn't fix it right, then they take it back to the manufacturer and say, hey, this is defective. And they said, well, that's because you rewired it the wrong way, you idiot.
Yeah, but the issue is, what you'll see a lot of times, especially with a company like Apple, and really they're sort of the blockade in a lot of these bills getting squashed,
right,
is they don't want sort of people fixing things for less money than they're going to charge. It's cheaper if you replace your broken screen or your drained battery or anything that might be fixable by you than to have them do it. But they don't want to have that being done. And in the scenario you're talking about, I think you're talking about a very small amount of people.
Well,
people just want the ability to essentially have the tools and parts made available so that they could fix their own products.
Okay. Jeremy Jones, how are you? By the way, I understand in Texas, okay, they want to pass the same law. And the one that's pushing it the most are people on death row, because they want to be able to make sure the electric chair is really going to work. And if not, they want to fix it and repair it. Okay. Okay, we've got some other people. Axe duty. Okay. Can you post the link again? I didn't see it. Okay. Joshua wants that. Jerome,
I'll post it once more.
I say go with the firing squad. In Utah,
I believe Utah still has the firing squad.
Yeah.
I mean, as we're seeing with states like California who are putting sort of a kibosh on the death penalty, I think that's a good plan going forward. I don't think, and I've never thought it's a very effective deterrent. What are you saying? Posting YouTube? I am posting it on YouTube. You don't see it?
I think he missed it. It kind of scrolled up. And
Bill, are you seeing it? Because maybe your chat doesn't allow links.
It should allow links.
I've posted it twice now. You should see my name.
See, I don't see your name at all. Oh, yeah, you have it here. It's https discord.go or GG?
GG.
Okay, /.
Here, you know what? I'll here. I think I could do it this way. That way, you'll just have to add the HTTPS. You might be able to see that.
Do you see that one now?
You'll just have to add some of the letters and put the dot in as opposed to the word.
Now, let me explain something. Well, Dev, here's the thing. If you go into Discord, those of you that want to speak, like Dev is talking to me, all right, you can go into the general chat and then click that on, and it'll link you as long as you have a mic. There's no camera, but it'll use the mic of your camera or the microphone that you're using separately, whatever, as long as you let it know what mic you're using. Then you'll be able to talk to us directly unless you just want to type. I just thought I'd mention that to you.
Yeah, it's kind of why we have both. And in the future, we might try something different. We'll see. Anyway, we'll go back to the news. North Korea threatens to halt denuclearization talks with U.S.
Oh, my God. You mean Donald Trump failed?
North Korea might.
Not according to him.
North Korea might suspend denuclearization talks with the U.S. unless the administration changes its stance following last month's summit in Hanoi, the Washington Post reports. President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un left without reaching a deal on sanctions against North Korea or denuclearization efforts in the country.
It's Hanoi.
Kim will make an official announcement soon on whether the diplomatic talks will continue, per the Post. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo responded to North Koreans' threats of suspending diplomatic talks at a press conference on Friday, maintaining that, quote, Chairman Kim made a commitment to denuclearize, and saying the Trump administration still hopes to continue that conversation.
All right. Dev, the city was Hanoi. It was the capital of North Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Since you like to correct people who mispronounce words, it's Hanoi, not Hanoi.
Who knows? Who cares?
I do.
I don't know, Bill. Thank you for the correction.
You're welcome. I do it anytime. Like I said, I believe in Netflix.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yes? You called my name?
Stop it. House Judiciary Committee planning hearing on the rise of white nationalism. The House Judiciary Committee is planning on hosting a hearing in the coming weeks addressing the rise of white nationalism in the U.S. and the hate crime and hate speech surrounding the movement, according to two sources with direct knowledge of the committee schedule. The hearings come on the heels of two mass shootings at mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, that killed 50 people, according to local law enforcement. The man charged with those attacks wrote a manifesto outlining his white nationalistic ideology, as well as his anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim views. The government also praised President Donald Trump as a, quote, symbol of renewed white identity and common purpose, though he said he did not support the president's policies. The president has dismissed this idea that he inspired the shooting, but the attacker's manifesto has sparked a renewed focus on Trump's rhetoric towards immigrants, especially those who hail from countries where Islam is the dominant religion, and his lack of condemnation for white nationalist groups.
Yeah, he doesn't want to offend his base. Okay. I wonder how many people in Trump's base belong to the KKK.
Is that really a big group, though, still?
Not today, but at one time, it was massive, like 3.5 billion people.
Yeah.
They used to play Halloween every night.
Yikes. I feel like a lot of that type of anger and racism and sort of white pride stuff really kind of shifted to the outskirts of places.
Mm-hmm.
Things like Jeremy Jones says, in prison. There was no real voice for them up until recently. I think the election of 2016 and sort of the fallout from that has enabled a lot of these people who had those feelings and that anger to come out and be more public about it.
Well, this is the one thing that Trump is great at doing. He draws the anger that is in these people by the tweets he makes and then walks away from it. It's like the person who walks by a smoldering little fire. I mean, it's just smoldering, okay? And he can't resist pouring gasoline on it. And then about 5 minutes later, since there's no flame yet, it's smoking even more, he walks by and accidentally drops a match and goes, oh my God, there's a fire here. And then calls the fire department and says, aren't I a hero? I prevented a disaster. That's the kind of a president he is. He creates his own crisis and then turns around and tries to tell everybody, see, I solved it. Okay?
Well, have you been keeping up with what's happening with his tweets and GM in Lordstown?
Oh, yeah.
So the last, it's been 2-3 days now, I think it's been.
Right.
That every so often he's tweeting about it. And, it's gone sort of a period of who to blame. He started off blaming, the United Auto Workers, the UAW.
Mm-hmm.
It was their fault. And then it was David Green, who is the president of the local here in Lordstown. Right. It was his fault.
Yeah.
And then it became the CEO of GM's fault. it's like this cycle of, oh, it's everybody's fault. Except what he's leaving out is at least 3 times did the president of that local union, I think it's 1211, something like that, I can't remember offhand, wrote to the president directly, essentially begging for his help to, let's get together, let's talk with GM, let's figure out a plan that we could save these jobs and that we could save this plant, and let's come to an agreement here. Nothing. Not a peep. And this is coming from the same man who promised workers in Ohio, because I remember this speech, don't sell your house, don't move jobs. All these manufacturing jobs, they're going to come flying back. They're all coming back. We're going to make this economy great. And, a lot of, I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of those people that work there kind of bought into that.
Oh.
And they supported him with the idea that, yes, the economy will kickstart to a place where our jobs are going to be safe. We're going to be making more money. We're going to go forward, and we're going to have a really good, position going into the future. And he lied, and he continues to lie. And he waits until the plant is finally idled, and now he starts tweeting.
Yeah, like it's not his fault. Like exactly. He had nothing to do with it.
He's blaming everybody else besides the fact that GM got a bailout from us, the American people, with our tax money back when they were about to bankrupt completely and close completely, and are now refusing when the economy is better and when they got a huge tax break because of his tax laws and his tax plans. They are now deciding, we're not going to invest in that plant anymore because people don't want small vehicles. That was her reasoning, the CEO. And they refuse to retrofit that plant to build a bigger vehicle. There are some estimates that the closure of that plant will cost the local area and the communities around it over the years, I think it's a 10-year, 15-year thing, $3 billion.
Well, this is the same president that told the people in Pennsylvania in the coal mining districts that he was going to bring jobs back to the coal industry, and they were going to have more work and more overtime than they ever knew what to do with. Of course, many of the coal companies since that time have closed down because they have a surplus of coal. Now, why? Guess who the biggest exporter of U.S. coal was in the world? China. Then they found the pollution was so bad with the sulfur dioxide coal, dirty coal, which is what is mined in Pennsylvania, that they in turn, because they wanted to have the Beijing Olympics, put a curtailment and cleaned up their atmosphere tremendously, but they also cut their coal consumption by 85% from the United States. I mean,
and that's a big factor, but it's not the only factor at play here, Bill. It's the fact that there is no such thing as clean coal. It's extremely harmful to the environment. It's dangerous for the workers. And you're exactly right. Those jobs aren't coming back.
Right.
And what's happening, and the very unfortunate aspect of this, is in sort of this rush to, appease those workers who want to keep those jobs, he signed in executive orders or told his EPA to ignore certain laws that sort of prevented some of those negative things to our environment to then take place. Things like, dumping into our water streams and our lakes and our rivers, and allowing certain pollutants to go back in the air, and, ignoring certain standards for exposure. And, it didn't matter to him. And yet all of those things he did is still not reviving the coal industry, because it's a dying industry.
Yeah.
And what America doesn't realize, and it's very frustrating, is the 1950s, the 1960s are over. The economy has changed. Jobs have changed, and they're going to continue to change. It's like the trucking industry. In 20 years, maybe less, maybe a little bit more, there won't be a need for truckers.
Well, here's another thing. Look at it this way. we were originally an agricultural society. Our main products were agricultural, tobacco being one of them. Okay, that was our big exporter. Then the Industrial Revolution came in. And when that happened, a lot of the people left the farms for industrial jobs, such as the auto industry, steel, and other technologies that began to take over. In the 40s, in the 30s, in the 20s, you would see 100 rail cars filled with coal. And they were outside US Steel in downtown Cleveland, in the flats. That was one shift. That was one shift of coal that they needed to burn for 8 hours to make steel. And so they would unload those cars as quickly as they could so the next train could come in with another 100 cars. And most of that coal came from West Virginia, Pennsylvania. And then, of course, utilities. That was how they generated electricity, with coal furnaces. When I was growing up, our heat for our building, which was a large apartment complex with 800 units, was, guess what? Heated by 2 boilers. And Harold every night would have to go there and shovel, for 2 hours coal to make sure that the boilers had coal for the night. And then every morning he'd do the same thing. And coal trucks would come up to the coal chute. They would open the coal chute, and down the hatch the coal would flow. And that's what he shoveled in. And then we switched to gas. And when you switched to gas, you didn't need coal. And here's the other thing. Donald, you're a genius, right? You went to Wharton School of Finance. I don't think you actually went to class. I think you paid people to go to class for you and take your tests. But the point is, even you have recognized that when a business isn't making money, you close it. Why is GM any different? Why is GM any different? It has a product that is not meeting the market. So what are you going to do? Just keep producing them? Do you know that in Germany in the Second World War, to keep labor busy, the prisoners of war, those that didn't go to the death camps, they would be manufacturing screws. And then after they made something like 25,000 screws, guess what they did? They melted them down again. In other words, they recycled the same screws these people were making because they had to they had to keep them busy, because their feeling was, as long as you're busy, you can't fight us. So it was a way of keeping the people working by creating an endless supply of the same product that nobody was using. And industry says this is ridiculous. We're to make money, not just keep making the same product over and over again when there's nobody out there that wants to buy it.
Well, I mean, it's true to say that with GM, that small cars in general have not been selling well. The Cruise was definitely on its way out. There's no getting way around that.
Right.
The problem is that GM in Lordstown didn't have the foresight to realize this, that they didn't acknowledge this years ago, in that the industry is going to change. That, yes, people want bigger vehicles, but they want, fuel economics that are allowing them to drive these vehicles. One of the reasons that bigger vehicles fell out for a little while was because with the increase in gas prices and the low mileage you got, you couldn't afford to drive them.
Right. And now we suddenly have a richness in oil. So now, gas
and other things. It's not just oil. It's the fact that, they have become more efficient. So a mile, or a gallon of gas gets you longer. So a lot of things have changed, but like that, the writing was on the wall. They should have known this.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, I want to make a notice, Joshua, we're not ignoring you. I'm reading your comments, and they're very good comments. I just want you to know, because sometimes you spend a lot of time typing something, and then you ask yourself, does anybody even know that I'm typing this stuff? And you're right. A lot of these people, when at the age of 50, got black lung from working in the coal mines over all those years. And you're right about recycling. We thought it was a great idea. And then we realized that unless you could get people to say glass goes in one container, plastic goes in another, paper goes in another, we didn't listen to ourselves. During the Second World War, before I was born, we had a massive recycling program in the United States. We recycled tires, steel, paper, plastic, and they would have paper drives, and they would be turned into pulp so that they could have printing paper. That's how the newspapers were able to continue to print, and how manuals could be printed for the war effort. This was all from scrap paper, and we had a great recycling. Then the war ends, we become prosperous, and what do? I mean, even today, I have 2 lamps. I have 1 lamp with 2 outlets that I turn on when I broadcast. Those are the only lamps I've got in the house working. Why do I need 8 lamps? Okay.
Get some more lamps.
What?
Some more lamps. Getting dark in there.
Boy, you need to see an ophthalmologist. You know that?
Get it together, Bill.
Yes. Okay. But the whole point of the matter is that when we get prosperous, we become less diligent because we aren't concerned with that $30 electric bill or $40 or $50 electric bill because we're now making more money. So we say, I'll leave the lights on. It doesn't matter. I don't like to go into a dark house. We'll leave 1 light on. Okay. Why do you have to leave 10 lights on? Well, I'm afraid somebody's going to break in. They're going to break in whether you leave 5 lights on or 1 light on. If they want to get in, they're going to get in. So the whole point of the matter is that we have to get back to rethinking these things. And you're right. We have to go through retraining. I mean, how many people do we know? I'm being serious, folks, that at my age are very familiar with the internet. Now, that doesn't mean I can program, but I understand what a DOS program is. When you see a link, that's basically a DOS command. It's what it is.
Oh, you can barely get around your computer.
I think we should take a vote, folks. Shall we ban him now? He's becoming a source of irritation. But the point of the matter is that you have to keep up with technology. Okay? Nobody gets anything on CDs anymore. They're DVDs. And so what you have to do is still make sure you've got one computer that can play the old style things. I still have VHS recorders. Why? Because I have some tapes that are VHS and I haven't converted them over to digital yet.
It's time, Bill.
Well, I just thought you might want to join and find that joyful. Okay, showing you that this old buzzard, is up to modern technology.
Speaking of the internet, Putin signs bill banning, quote, blatant disrespect for Russian state online. Russian lawmakers say the bills are intended to combat fake and abusive comments online, but critics have labeled the legislation, quote, direct censorship, and yet another step towards autocracy. Online publications and users that repeatedly spread fake news will face fines up to 1.5 million rubles or $22,900.
Do you know what
repeat offenders that publish information deemed insulting to Russian authorities, including Putin, could face 15 days in jail?
Do you know what this bill has been called?
Oh, here we go. What?
It's been called the Donald Trump law
Yep.
of Russia. I thought that was good, folks. Keep going on with the news. You're great.
Commons Speaker blocks another vote on Theresa May's Brexit plan. The Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow, blocked another vote on Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit plan in a surprise statement on Monday, stating that the Commons could not vote again on the, quote, same proposition or substantially the same proposition that was rejected by 149 votes last week. Why it matters. It throws May's plan to once again submit her Brexit plan to members of Parliament into chaos as the UK's exit from the European Union looms in just 11 days.
Jeremy said, do you have any 8-tracks? As a matter of fact, I do. But I don't have an 8-track player. But there are some, you can still buy them. Okay. In fact, my whole music collection at one time was 8-track, then it was CD. Okay. I had to upgrade everything. Okay.
You know, over the years, things like vinyl records and cassette tapes have actually made a comeback. I think a lot of people, not a lot of people, some people like the sort of tactile feel of physical media as opposed to all digital. There used to be some debates that, oh, well, vinyl records sound better than digital. But when you really break it down, that's not true. You get about the same sound quality. I just think some people kind of like that feel of like physically taking a record out, you know, putting it on the player, setting the needle, and kind of listening to it. So it kind of gives you a more personal feel, I guess, to your music, which probably makes it sound better.
Well, the other thing in reference to that is the fact that, you know, the idea that there's a physical interaction between yourself and the media that you're using, as opposed to sticking a CD in and then trying to figure out what track you want to listen to or program it, you know, and everything else like that. But I think also is the fact that film, there are still people out there, because digital does not equal the same depth quality that film has. Film has a certain depthness to it when you put it out of focus that they can't get with digital as much as
that's up to some debate nowadays. That what you're running into is like you're talking about more of an issue of early digital cameras and, you know, production of film. That's why a lot of directors prefer to use film still, even though digital was much more widely available, because there wasn't that same sort of, you know, look and feel, and you get sort of a film grain, and some of the color reproduction on film was better than digital. I would honestly say that nowadays with modern cameras, that argument doesn't really float anymore.
Well, welcome to Cecil B. DeMille II. Did you know this is the great-grandson of Cecil B. DeMille?
I wish.
No, you don't.
Speaking of, I watched a movie this past weekend.
Was it digital or was it film?
They filmed it on digital.
Okay, they filmed it on
Stan and
digital.
Ollie, which was about Laurel and Hardy. You know, their sort of partnership, and it was more about their last years as opposed to like their entire career.
Yeah.
But I found it pretty interesting. I thought it was good. I think both of the actors did very well. I'm not super into those early films. Like I can appreciate them for what they are. And somebody made a really interesting point that a lot of like Charlie Chaplin and Laurel and Hardy and Buster Keaton, that those films are a little bit hard to watch nowadays because back then it was like a big production. You would go to your local theater, they would have a little orchestra, and they would sync the music, they would sync the playing of the music to the scenes, and there would be like the atmosphere, and people would laugh at the jokes, and that would make them good pictures. Where if you try to watch those same pictures in a quiet room by yourself somewhere, they don't sort of have that same feel to them.
Yeah, you're right, because if you've ever gone to a Rocky Horror Picture Show night, where the people actually dress up as the characters, it's more entertaining because now not only do you have the movie running, you have the characters there and the people in the audience. Okay. And like, for instance, I remember the very first time I went to the thing, I had never been to a Rocky Horror Picture Show. And all of a sudden you hear somebody in the audience yell out, "Cut the rope." And then right on the camera, right on cue, he cuts the rope. And then it started to rain, of course. And somebody said, "Get out the plain dealer." It was like, what? And then I was asking some friends of mine, I said, "What do they do in other cities?" He says, "No, it's the plain dealer." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because when the film was being made, the producer's mother," he was from Cleveland, "the producer's mother sent him the plain dealer subscription for 2 years so that he wouldn't be lonely. So that was the only newspaper that was in the cab, in the car, when they started the rain sequence. That's why the plain dealer is used in that film, because that's what they covered their heads with, the plain dealer." Okay, and everything else like that. It's an interesting.
It's a little fun factoid.
By the way, in reference to your 8K camera, the red camera, yes, that is as close as you're going to get at this point. Whether it gets better down the road, I'm not sure, but they've made a lot of progress.
8K is just insane. I mean, I think there's a few TVs out there that do that, or at least monitors. But I mean, even 4K is not that widespread yet. But it's like anything. I remember when the original DVD players came out, and sort of how much they cost. I mean, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars for something that you could literally find for $10 nowadays. The same is true for Blu-ray when those first came out. Even HD TVs, stuff that is really cool eventually, boils down to cheaper and cheaper products.
Well, because more people were buying the thing. I mean, the more
mass production. And easier and more cost-effective to actually produce the technology as well.
See, the problem that Blu-ray had, or the disc. Remember, the disc was competing against VHS.
No, Bill. You're talking about Betamax.
No, VHS. First of all, Betamax came out first by Sony, and Betamax was 1 hour length. Now, the first question everybody had was, why do you need this? Who would watch a 1 hour show several days later? Okay, it didn't make any sense, but they kept marketing it, and then they came out with a 2 hour tape. Now, this changed the market because a lot of people said, "Oh, Monday night at the movies on NBC, we can record the entire show because it's 2 hours long." And then they found out, gee, we can zap through the commercials. And then VHS came out as a competitor. And when they came out, which was Japanese also, okay, as was Sony, they came out with a 4 hour tape. And then we went to a 5.5 hour tape by Sony, then 6 hours by VHS, and finally 8 hours by VHS. Now, the Sony quality was better if you put it on a scope, but the average viewer's eyes aren't that good. And it couldn't tell the difference between a VHS and a beta tape at the high speed. In other words, if it was done in a 2 hour mode, they looked identical. Although technically the beta was superior. Now, Sony was smart enough to remarket the beta machine instead of letting it die and put it into the commercial market. And it became the staple of news organizations that used beta because they could get it in 15-minute, 30-minute, and 1-hour cassettes. And as a result of that, they were compatible with the beta machines that they had already bought at the old technology. So they had that compatibility. But eventually, the reason that Sony failed was not because of quality, but because of length.
Well, yeah, length. And also you have to remember that the VHS machines were much lower in retail price. You would see, some of those Betamax players for $1,000. And like you're saying, as far as quality, yes, Betamax was superior, with things like lower video noise, slightly higher resolution. The cost and the limit on time, initially, like you said, 60 minutes, really kind of prevented it from ever taking off. But there was another format war years later with, again, Sony, and I forget who was behind. It was basically like HDD, I think it was, like high definition discs. And I know Microsoft supported it. And it was basically the Betamax of the next generation of discs.
Right.
It was between Sony's Blu-ray discs and that. And it kind of failed for the same reason that, Blu-ray was easier to use. It was less expensive. They had put it in their PlayStation, which was really popular. So, the adaptation of that format was much more expensive than the alternative. But, I always find that stuff interesting.
Yes. Pretty soon we're going to call you Trivia Boy.
I do like trivia.
Yeah, he goes.
I thought that was pretty successful the other night.
Yes, it was. He goes all the way back to Thomas Edison.
Oh, we went farther back than that. We were talking about the invention of scissors and all kinds of things.
No, I meant you. Oh, you were a child.
I will say though is next time we do it, I think what we're gonna do, if it builds up and if it's popular, I'm not gonna do it if there's only like 3 or 4 people there. But if we get like a handful of people, I think we'll keep a point system and maybe do like a cheap giveaway, like a $20 Amazon gift card or something.
And who's going to pay for that?
Don't worry about it, Bill.
Okay. I'm not. You heard it, folks. I thought he was going to give dog biscuits away.
But again, I'm not, like I said, Bill, we ain't doing it with 3 or 4 people. It's got to be a real good night that we keep track of, the point system and maybe have like 50 questions and then whoever wins it.
Correct. I think that would be a great idea. Great idea. You're really
any other news.
You're really a bright individual, but go on with the news. I have to clean my pipe.
Bill, I told you quit smoking.
Yeah. When you get to be my age, you can tell me that. Until you're my age, shut up. Okay.
Saudi prince authorized secret crackdowns carried out by Khashoggi killers.
No.
Oh, I know. Beginning in 2017, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman authorized a secret campaign to crack down on dissidents, with at least a dozen of the operations carried out by the members of the same team that murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
They didn't murder him. That's all fake news, according to Donald. They didn't murder anyone.
Hey, we're getting into that. The New York Times reports, citing, quote, American officials who have read classified intelligence reports about the campaign. The operations reportedly involved the kidnapping, detention, torture, and in some cases, the forced repatriation of Saudi citizens living abroad. Repatriation. Oh, that means like going to kidnap them and bringing them back. Sources tell the Times that the team, known to American officials as the Saudi Rapid Intervention Group, was so busy that it requested holiday bonuses from a top advisor to MBS last June. Why it matters. After a series of evolving explanations, the Saudi government ultimately settled on the narrative that the Khashoggi murders was a, quote, rogue operation gone wrong, and is now in the process of prosecuting 11 members of that team. This report suggests that the Khashoggi episode was not an isolated case, but rather a, quote, particularly... Oh, I lost my sentence. Part of a... Okay, my bad, guys. Of a wider campaign to silence Saudi dissidents. In February, President Trump refused to meet a congressional deadline for providing a report about who was responsible for Khashoggi's death, this following a pattern of Trump refusing to condemn MBS, whom his administration has positioned as a key strategic ally, even in the face of reports that the U.S. intelligence has concluded the young prince directly ordered the operation. Also, there was no follow-up to that. Have you heard anything?
Well, the House Democrats said, "Where is it?" And they said, "We're looking for it. We'll eventually get it for you.
It's somewhere in here.
We'll get it to you." You know, the thing is this: he's got hotels and golf courses in Saudi Arabia. Okay, he owns them, and he's afraid that Saudi government would do like Venezuela did, or other foreign countries, where they just took over. Saudi Arabia took over Shell, Amoco, Texaco, and other U.S. oil-producing companies because they didn't like something. So they just nationalized them. And they just took them away and didn't give them any compensation, which costs U.S. refiners a large amount of money, including British Petroleum, which was a British company, or the Netherlands, I should say. They're from the Netherlands. They're not a British company. That's BP. For, you know, bastard people. But fortunately, I got compensation for the damage they did in the Keys when I lived there, finally. Collins, how old are you? Somebody was asking. They wanted to know how old you were.
It's a pretty personal question.
Well, it's up to him to answer it. You know, he could say,
True.
No comprende español. Or mucho mayor.
Wow, that's racist.
No, it's not. That's Yiddish.
What else do we got? Anything else we talk about?
Talk about your dogs.
Doing good. Love about puppies.
He's got two dogs that look so much like him, it's hard to tell which one is which. That's why they say he goes.
That sounds like fake news. Yeah.
That's why they say he goes to the dogs. Well, those of you that have joined us, please, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we talk about anything, and we're kind of unfiltered. Okay, although we do ask that you don't use foul language. Okay, it's not, you know, we'll talk about just about anything, but politics seems to swirl
this
around.
This is the main focus. But we'll talk, like you said, we'll talk about anything.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I understand that Trump's personal lawyer, Cohn, okay, he's gone through his fourth loaf of bread. Remember, he was great for spreading breadcrumbs. He's gone through his fourth loaf of bread. Okay, and the Mueller team loves him.
I was confused what you were getting at, but now I understand.
I figured it would confuse you because it's a sensible joke.
Yeah.
And I only tell sensible jokes. If it's not sensible, I don't tell it.
Big yikes.
But anyhow, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we're going to be broadcasting here. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays and maybe Saturdays, we'll be broadcasting on UNA.
And we always have a standing thing that in the light of breaking news of significance, that we would come on and do a special broadcast.
Yeah, things like Donald Trump barricades himself in the Oval Office. Secret Service tries to break in. Then Donald says,
and I think, what we're going to do for the debates this year next, for the Democrats at least, is that we will be on that those nights. We'll switch the schedule to fit, aligned with that.
What's my view on Christchurch? Terrible. Absolutely terrible. To attack any particular religion and go after them. They should have shot that guy and saved themselves a trial. And I also have to condemn Trump for his stupid remark about, I don't think white supremacy is an issue. Okay, even though our own government and other governments say it is a big issue. It's the next form of ISIS. And Donald, of course, downplays it all. I mean, all he says is, well, I'm sorry about the deaths. But I don't believe that white supremacy is anywhere, rampant. What an ass.
I will say it's telling that in New Zealand, it took them a single mass shooting to sort of step back, to pause, to reflect on their gun laws, and then make a change.
Yes.
And yet, here in this country, we've had multiple terrible mass shootings, in schools and schools, concerts, churches, theaters, etc. And we've done nothing.
And synagogues and mosques. And what have we said? We can't do anything because it will infringe on the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment does not say, okay, you have the right to kill people innocently because you have the right to bear arms. That's not what the Second Amendment says, but that's what the IRA says. You take away our guns and NRA, thank you for correcting me. And as a result of that, you're taking away our right of protection. What do you think the police department's for? Okay.
Well, okay. So the issue is we don't have to get rid of all guns. We just have to have sensible regulation put in place that the amendment itself calls for.
The original purpose of that amendment, folks, was, remember, the United States wasn't even formed yet. It was debating its constitution. But it also was afraid that a foreign enemy could come, like the British, which did, and that the civilians, militia, as they were called, had to have the right to bear arms, to protect themselves. That was why it was there. But it has become so much of a red herring that today we say, but we can't touch that amendment regardless of these crimes that are committed. Because
also it's which I think was well founded, especially in that era. It was the distrust amongst the founding fathers of government in general.
Yeah.
That if the citizens were not also armed, that you could easily have a tyrannical government take over and, subject its citizens to awful things.
Well, example.
But the problem is that argument no longer holds weight. For one, the type of weapons that public in this country have access to comparative to the military, I mean, the offset is significant. there isn't a citizen in this country that's going to be able to withstand the might of the government if they choose to do that. Second of all, it talks about a well-regulated militia. And the Supreme Court acknowledged that, decided laws based upon that, sort of putting limits on weapons, etc., up until DC versus Heller was decided that, oh, well, you can't do that. And I guess the issue is we're not even having the discussions about gun safety and regulations and maybe certain policies that we can enact to make sure that these things aren't happening. That people who shouldn't have guns don't have them. Well, that there is a central universal background check for all people, private, public, etc., sales, to go through to get those weapons.
All right, let's take an example. Okay, let's say you have a 73-year-old guy who decides
you shouldn't have a gun.
Who wants to go out and buy a gun. Now, this 73-year-old guy has never committed a crime, so he has no criminal record. But the question is this 73-year-old guy, why does he want a gun? Well, I want a gun because it's my right under the Constitution. Yeah, but what are you going to do with it? I'm going to protect my home. Okay. What kind of a building do you live in? Apartment complex?
No. I don't like that argument, Bill.
Well, what I'm
focused on that is not the solution.
Well, I'm understanding that, but what I'm trying to tell you is this: just because they don't have a criminal record, apparently means in this country you can go out and buy as many guns as you want. And when you think about it, you have a very small percentage of the American people that own a large percentage of the guns. It would be like, for instance, you have 25 billion automobiles owned by 6 million people. And you say, we have a great mobile society. And they go, what are you talking about? Only 6 million people in the United States can drive cars. But they own 25% of all the automobiles manufactured. We would say that was an absurd remark. Wouldn't make any sense. And that's the problem. You don't need a reason to go out and buy a gun. There's 3 gun dealerships within walking distance of my house. I can go to any one of them. If I got the money, buy a Glock 9, buy a 48, 45, buy a Super Magnum, do whatever I want. And the gun dealer is not going to say, sir, what are you going to use this for? What are you going to do with this? Why do you want this? He's not going to ask me any of those questions. He's just going to say, that'll be $7.95 plus tax. Do you want to use your MasterCard or Visa or pay cash? Oh, and by the way, you forgot to buy bullets. Don't worry. Here's 100. Get you started. Oh, and by the way, we have a rifle range. Would you like to join? Nah, not in town that much. Oh, okay. Have a nice day. He's happy. He made a sale, a good profit. And it's just ludicrous when you think about it. And if you've ever gone to a gun show and seen all of the weapons that people want to sell, you're absolutely amazed. It's estimated that the average gun show with 100 exhibitors has approximately 10,000 weapons for sale. 10,000 weapons. 100 distributors. Some of these are independent people, so they don't even have to go through a background check. It's a personal sale. It's like when you sell your car. When you sell a car, you don't have to go to the title bureau for that person to legally pay you and drive the car you used to own. You sign the slip. They have to go to the License Bureau and now get the title transferred to their name. Not your responsibility. Now, why was that done? To make it easier for people to sell automobiles to their friends. Okay? It's the responsibility of whoever buys the car to get a title within a certain number of days. I think it's 30 days. They have to get a title. And now, as far as the state is concerned, they now legally know that this license plate and this registration belongs to this car. So if there's a crime committed. I mean, it's just absurd. And they're called loopholes in the law. And these are what law-abiding citizens and criminals look for. Criminals more than law-abiding. But there are a lot of law-abiding people. I have a friend of mine who is a federally licensed arms dealer. And I said, let me ask you a question. If I was going to want to buy a gun from you tonight, could you sell it to me? And he said, not tonight. I would do a background check on you. I said, why? Because I'm a federally licensed arms dealer. I said, let's assume you were not. He says, well, any person that goes around and sells a gun to somebody else without doing a background check, even a credit check, or something to know about you, is an idiot. Those are his words. Now, I said to him, well, because you're federally licensed, does that mean that it's harder for you? He says, no, because the people that buy guns from me, know they have clean records. So he says it's not a concern. It's just a time thing. We have a thing in law called a cooling off period. This is where you go out and you buy something, and like a diamond ring or something. Most places now give you 3 days. It's called buyer's remorse. Let's say you go that night to see your girlfriend to give her the ring, and she says, no, I don't want to marry you. They go back the next day and they say they don't want the ring, and the dealer will take the ring back. We do that. We have lemon laws today to protect dishonest car dealers who paint a car, make it look great. And then they have what we call taillight warranty. When they can't see the taillights any longer, the warranty is expired. Okay? So you see that happening. Lemon laws protect the consumer from that kind of a situation. And justifiably. Because you're not spending $100, $20, $50. You're spending maybe $2,000, $5,000 for a car. And you expect this thing to work. Not to die on you, the next morning, and then find out that the carburetor is no good, or that the starter's no good, or that there's no AC and you live in Arizona, okay? Or you live in Nebraska in the wintertime and you don't have a heater in the car, but the air conditioning works fine. No heater though, okay? That's terrible. I mean, these are the types of laws that are there to protect the consumer and honest business people. Because an honest person is going to be honest with you and tell you, well, it's not the best running car. It's got tires on it that may have to be replaced, in about a year. It needs some, mechanical work on it. Here's what it needs. And that's why we've adjusted the price accordingly. Okay. But today, in our world today, we have certain things that you can buy with no restrictions. Example, there's a medication called Ambien, which is used for sleep. It's a very powerful drug in the proper dosage. So anyhow, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he says, oh, my wife takes that. I said, what's the dose? And he says 10 milligrams, which is enough to really pretty well knock you out. Okay. 5 does very little, but 10 does a good job. All right. She says to me, "Are you having problems sleeping?" I said, "Well, I've been talking to my doctor and I'm going to have her prescribe at least the generic version." She says, "Why? Do you want some now?" I mean, she's not doing it to make money. I'm a friend. She's saying, "Well, if you need it, I'll give it to you." Now, that's a direct violation of the law. She's giving out prescription drugs that are prescribed for her, not for me. Okay? But people will do those things, or you can go out in the open market and they'll give you any drug you want. As long as you got the money, that's fine with them.
Wait a minute, Bill. What are you saying? Your doctor gave you pills?
She's licensed. Okay. She's licensed.
But I understand. Yes, correct. And that some doctors, not all, some doctors will get sort of sample medication from these prescription companies to give out to their patients.
That's true. But most of that, they will write a prescription for the sample pack and mark on the prescription sample pack, because they must keep those prescriptions on file for 5 years. So if they get audited, the question is, okay, you had this sample pack. Okay, what did you do with it? Now, true, a lot of drug distributors, that's people that sell drugs. I mean, we're talking about, and they're legitimate. They work for pharmaceutical companies. Their job is to meet with doctors and say, by the way, there's a new blood pressure pill out now. It's called such and such, and it's 5 times more effective in these studies. And it's trying to encourage the doctor to prescribe that particular blood pressure pill over another kind. Okay. And obviously that's what they do. But a lot of times they're given samples, like maybe 10 or 15 samples, and say, here's 15 samples. Okay. Try them out, see how they work. Now, a good doctor, an honest doctor, will write out a prescription and say, sample pack, 10 milligrams of Ambien. And they keep that on file so that if something happened and there was like an overdose or the person died, they'd come back and say, where'd they get the drugs? Well, they got it from this doctor. It was prescribed. Now, that's the sensible way. But you've got a lot of other friends that'll share drugs with you and say, oh, here, you want a couple Ambien? Here, I'll give it to you. And the problem is that you don't always know. Now, my doctor has restricted that pill because she's still trying to figure out whether I might have sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is where you go to sleep and temporarily you stop breathing. Now, normally your system kicks in and wakes you up so that you catch your breath and you don't die. But sometimes it doesn't. And you literally die for lack of oxygen. So she said, well, Bill, I don't want to give you this drug in that high a dosage because without knowing whether or not you have sleep apnea, I don't want to take the risk.
Why don't you just go, have a sleep study?
Well, that's what she's ordered for me. So I'm going to do that next month. Okay. And we're going to have our sleep study. Okay. And then if that comes back negative, then she'll issue it. And I told her jokingly, I said, wait a minute, see if I understand this right. You mean I would go to bed on earth and I would wake up in heaven? She looks at me and says, where's this going? I said, I'll take it. I'll take that risk anytime. That would be a great way to go. No suffering, nothing. You just wake up in a new place. And she says, well, I don't want to take the risk. I said, you may not, but I will. She said, no. And she's a good doctor, by the way. I mean, I'm not arguing with her. I'm not saying, look, I demand. Because you don't do that with a good physician. You follow their advice.
Won't get you very far.
Well, one of the first advices I got from this doctor was I was drinking 2 liters. Now, if any of you are familiar with a 2 liter of Coca-Cola or Pepsi, you know that's a lot of sugar and,
Calories.
calories and everything. Okay. And I've been doing that for years. So finally, when I mentioned it, she says, well, you're going to have to cut out that. I said, well, I don't want to cut off Coke altogether. She says, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll let you have 2 cans of 12-ounce Coke a day, one in the morning and one in the evening. You can't have 2 of them together. I said, okay. So that's, sometimes I drink 2, sometimes I drink 1, sometimes I miss it altogether. But the point I'm trying to get across is that I was harming myself, but certainly didn't feel it. Now, today, I had my weight done, and I was 240 pounds. On November 1st of last year, guess what I was? 291 pounds. So in less than 6 months, I've lost, over 50 pounds. I feel better. Obviously,
That's good.
Yeah, my hip is not bothering as much because there's not as much pressure on it. We joke about the fact that, when a male is losing weight? You know how you know when a male is losing weight?
I don't even want to know the answer.
Well, they can see the family jewels.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Because as most people are aware, it's your stomach that has the greatest amount of water and other stuff on it. So in other words, they're joking about the fact that as your weight goes down, so does your stomach. Now, the other thing I've noticed, which is a good thing, is if you've ever been one of those heavy-set people trying to get into a airplane seat, you're just kind of squished in. You don't have a lot of room, okay? And when I first got my chair, my recliner, it was a tight fit. I just squeezed into it. Now I have room to move around. So there's a lot of movement, which is great. So that's also an indication that I'm, losing weight. My waist is going down as well. So these are positive things. And my goal is to continue to do this, obviously. It's for my health. It's for my welfare, because I know everybody wants to see me for the next 25 or 30 years. I know that nobody watching tonight would want to not see me. They would want me to live forever. But I'm looking for 100 at least. Okay, but anyhow, that's just my philosophy.
I think it's a good place to end it, Bill.
Boy, he sure knows how to kill a story. Well, hold on for a second. I've got to wipe my hands. I was putting some lotion on my legs because they were itching like crazy. So anyhow, I was unable to grab my mouse. All right, listen, folks, thank you for being here. We'll be here Wednesday night. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern time, we'll be on YouNow and be broadcasting on that channel. Again, all of you people that joined us tonight, thank you. Please let your friends know. Give them the link. And then if you can, connect up audibly and join the conversation as Deb and I do.
Yes.
Because we can have some more conversations and probably get into some good dialogue. All right, folks. Again, thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it. I tell all of you, it's the same thing. Peace. See you Wednesday night on YouTube and Tuesday night, 8 p.m. on YouNow. Okay?
Good night.
Good night.